I used to work the night shift at a rehab center on the south side of Briarwood, a quiet little town that pretended nothing bad ever happened within its borders. Everyone there smiled too wide, spoke too softly, and acted like the world was safer than it actually was. Maybe that's why I liked walking through Briarwood Park after my shift. It was empty, peaceful, and had this weird melancholy that made sense to me after dealing with addicts all night. But one night, I learned the hard way that the park had teeth. It started at around 1:20 a.m. I had just clocked out and was cutting across the park as usual. I wasn't supposed to, the trail was poorly lit and the woods pressed in too close. But it shaved 15 minutes off my walk home, and I've never been the type to care about cautionary signs. That night the air felt heavier. Not cold, just thick, like the humidity before a storm. Except the sky was totally clear. No clouds. No wind. No insects. Just silence. And that was the first red flag. Briarwood Park was always alive at night. Crickets, frogs, rustling leaves, something. But that night? Nothing. It sounded like someone pressed mute on the whole world. I stopped walking. And then I heard it. A child laughing. Not giggling. Laughing. Wild, breathless, high-pitched laughter echoing across the empty playground. At first, I told myself it was just my brain firing wrong after a long shift. I had gone 14 hours without a break. Maybe I was hallucinating. That was easier to accept than the idea that a child was playing alone in a park at almost 1:30 in the morning. But then it came again, closer this time. A boy. Maybe 5 or 6. I turned toward the playground and froze. Something was sitting at the top of the spiral slide. But it wasn't a kid. It was a silhouette, too small to be an adult, too still to be alive, and too dark to be recognizable. The moonlight should have cast some detail on it, but instead it looked like a hole cut into the night. A shape made of nothing. The laughter didn't match the stillness. It sounded like it was circling me even though the thing on the slide wasn't moving at all. My instincts finally kicked in. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes locked on the silhouette. As I moved, the laughter shifted, it began echoing from inside the slide, spiraling downward like something was crawling through it. Then the silhouette vanished. Not climbed down. Not jumped. Not faded. Just blinked out like a TV screen turning off. I spun around, adrenaline spiking. The playground was empty. But something was at the bottom of the slide. A handprint. Tiny. Perfect. And wet, like a kid had pressed their palm into the sand after washing their hands. Except the sand beneath was bone dry. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I didn't want to alert whatever was watching me. I just walked, calm, steady, controlled, toward the exit of the park. My hands were shaking violently, but my steps stayed even. My breathing stayed shallow. I kept telling myself that none of this was real. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I should have ignored it. I know that now. But I answered. A child whispered into the receiver. Do you want to play with me? I swear on everything I love, I felt my stomach drop so hard it hurt. My legs locked. My skin went cold. The voice was the same pitch, the same faint echo, the same laughter I had heard minutes before. I hung up and started speed walking out of the park. Then the swings creaked behind me. Not lightly, violently. Like someone was pumping their legs hard, trying to launch themselves into the air. I didn't want to look. But I did. One swing was moving wildly, jerking back and forth with impossible force. The chain screeched under the strain. But there was no one on it. And then the second swing started moving. Not as fast. Not as wild. Just, swaying. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone was sitting there gently kicking their feet. My feet finally listened to the part of my brain screaming run. I bolted. Halfway across the park, I heard the slide echoing again, this time with the sound of something metal scraping along its inside. Like nails. Or claws. But the laughter followed me. It wasn't behind me anymore, it was in the trees. Above me. Beside me. Surrounding me in a perfect circle. I sprinted so hard my lungs burned. The exit was close, 30 feet, maybe less. I didn't dare look anywhere except straight ahead. And that's when I saw him. A boy. Standing directly under the streetlight near the park exit. Face pale. Shirt dirty. Hands hanging at his sides. Eyes too dark to reflect light. He wasn't moving. But his shadow was. It stretched toward me like a long, jagged hand, reaching across the pavement even though the light wasn't angled to create that type of shadow. It crawled forward, flattening and widening like a spill of ink. I skidded to a stop so hard my shoes scraped the concrete. The boy tilted his head. And his mouth opened. Way too wide. Far past human anatomy. His jaw unhinged like a snake's, slow, cracking, unnatural. And then the laughter came pouring out of him, not like a sound but like a physical force. It vibrated the air. The swings behind me screeched. The slide groaned. Even the trees shivered. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I knew was that if I froze, I was dead. So I ran. I ran past him, through the gate, across the street. My legs almost gave out but I didn't stop until I hit the intersection 2 blocks away. Only then did the laughter fade. It didn't stop, it simply drifted back into the park like whatever it belonged to couldn't leave the boundary. I made it home somehow, shut every curtain, locked every door, and stayed awake until sunrise. I didn't tell anyone for a long time. Not because I thought they wouldn't believe me, but because part of me feared that talking about it would invite it back. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. 2 weeks later. My phone buzzed again at 1:26 a.m. Same unknown number. I let it ring. Let it stop. Then it buzzed again. And again. 7 times in a row. On the 8th call, I answered, hands shaking, heart in my throat. No laughter this time. Just a whisper. Almost disappointed. You ran before we could play. Then the line went dead. I blocked the number. But I know that doesn't matter. Because last night, while taking out my trash, I heard it again. That same wild, breathless, echoing laughter. Coming from the park. Or maybe not just the park. It sounded closer. Like it had found me again. I've always loved late-night walks. I know that sounds stupid, especially after what happened, but for years it was the only time I felt like I could breathe. My apartment is small, my roommates are loud, and my job at the hospital drains every ounce of my patience. Walking cleared my head. It made me feel human again. Until one night someone decided to follow me. It was early October. Cool but not cold, the kind of night where the streetlights make long amber shapes on the pavement. I had finished a double shift and didn't feel like going straight home, so I cut through the old Maple Ridge Park. It was the fastest path to my apartment, and at 12:45 a.m. the place was completely dead. Or so I thought. The moment I stepped through the iron gate, my stomach tightened. I couldn't explain it. The air smelled wrong, earthy and metallic at the same time, like damp leaves mixed with something coppery. The trees were still. The playground empty. Even the fountain in the center had been turned off for the season, leaving only a stagnant puddle at the bottom. I was halfway down the main path when I saw him. A man standing under the street lamp at the far end of the park. Hood up. Hands in his pockets. Facing me. The hood was gray, a washed-out color like it had been through hundreds of storms. I couldn't see his face at all, just a dark hollow where it should have been. I froze for a second but forced myself to keep walking. A lot of people wear hoodies. A lot of people stand around at night. I wasn't going to let paranoia win. But as I walked, he didn't move. Not a shift. Not a twitch. Nothing. Just staring. I stepped off the main path, heading toward a side trail that led to my street. When I glanced back, he was gone. Completely. No sound. No footsteps. No movement in the trees. Just vanished. I hugged my arms around myself and sped up. The trail was narrow, with old benches along the fence line and dead leaves carpeting the ground. The only light came from the broken moon slipping through the branches. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to confirm what I already felt crawling up my spine. But I did. And there he was. The man in the gray hood was now halfway down the trail, closer than before, walking directly toward me. I forced myself not to break into a run. I kept a fast pace, but I didn't want to trigger anything. Maybe he was just heading the same direction. Maybe this was all a coincidence. Then he stopped. Dead still. Just watching me again. The trail curved, and when I rounded the corner, I started walking faster than I ever had in my life. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. I kept telling myself, get to the exit. Get to the exit. Get to the exit. I looked back. He was closer. Much closer. Only about 50 feet behind me now. And this time he wasn't walking. He was standing at an angle, like he had been mid-step but froze the second I turned. His head was tilted to the side, too far to be natural, like he was studying me with curiosity rather than malice. That's when instinct finally overrode logic. I ran. I ran so hard the cold air stabbed my lungs. My shoes slipped on the damp leaves, my shins screamed with every impact, and my vision blurred from panic. Behind me, the footsteps changed. They were faster. Louder. Heavier. Matching my pace. I didn't dare look back again. I kept my eyes on the faint glow of the exit ahead, the only thing cutting through the darkness like a promise of survival. I was almost at the gate when the footsteps stopped. Just stopped. Silence swallowed the trail. I didn't slow down. I sprinted through the exit, across the street, and didn't stop until I reached the tall stone steps of St. Morley Church. I collapsed onto the top step, gasping for breath. I checked behind me. No one. No footsteps. No gray hood. I stayed there for several minutes until my breathing steadied. Eventually, I convinced myself it was all in my head. The man probably wasn't even following me. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe the darkness played tricks on me. But then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Why did you run? My throat tightened. I looked around again, but the street was completely empty. I texted back. Who is this? The reply came instantly. You walk here every night. My heart dropped into my stomach. I deleted the conversation, turned off my phone, and practically sprinted back to my apartment. But it didn't end there. A week later, I was coming home early, around 7 p.m. Sun still out. People around. I felt safe for the first time in days. Then I saw it. A gray hood. On a man standing across the street from my building. Same posture. Same stillness. Same faceless shadow inside the hood. He didn't move. Not even when cars passed in front of him. He just stood there, angled slightly toward me. Watching. I went straight inside and told my roommates. They brushed it off, said it was probably some random guy waiting for an Uber. I wanted to believe them. Then night came. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. to a noise. Not loud. Just soft tapping. Like someone gently flicking their fingernail against glass. Tap. 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 It came from my bedroom window. 6 floors up. I turned on my lamp, but the tapping stopped. I waited, heart thudding, before slowly approaching the window. The outside was dark. Empty. Except for something on the glass. I leaned in closer. It was a fingerprint. Perfectly clear. And smeared just slightly downward, like someone had dragged their finger slowly along the outside of the pane. My window faces the courtyard. There's no ledge. No fire escape. Nothing a person could stand on. I closed the curtains and didn't sleep again that night. The next evening, I broke my rule about late-night walks. I wasn't going anywhere alone. I stayed locked inside, curtains drawn, lights dim. But around midnight, I checked the peephole out of pure paranoia. He was there. Standing in the hallway. Gray hood up. Face invisible. Only 3 feet from my door. Not knocking. Not moving. Just facing my apartment like he was listening to my breathing. I stumbled back and grabbed my phone to call the police, but when I looked again. He was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Nothing. Almost like he had never been there. The cops searched the building but found no one matching the description. They told me stalkers rarely escalate, that he probably just picked a random door to stand near. They didn't understand. He wasn't random. He had been following me for days. And he was getting closer. I tried sleeping at my friend Jenna's place the next night. She lived across town in a luxury high-rise with cameras, a doorman, and keycard access. We were watching a movie when Jenna went still. "Is your phone on silent?" she asked. "No." "Then why is it buzzing on the table?" I looked over. Unknown number. Vibrating violently like someone was calling repeatedly. I picked it up, hands shaking. One new message. A photo. Taken from behind me. In Jenna's living room. I could see the back of my head. I could see the couch. I could see Jenna. Worse, I could see the reflection in the window across from us. A gray hood. Standing in the far corner of the room. Watching us. I spun around so fast I nearly fell, but there was nothing there. No one. Just a cold draft rolling across the floor like someone had just stepped out of the room. That was 5 months ago. I moved states. Changed my number. Deleted every social media account. I never walk alone at night anymore. But last Tuesday, I received a package at my new address. No return label. Inside was a single hoodie. Gray. Faded. Worn. And a note pinned to it. "You can run anywhere. I'll follow. I'm not the kind of person who scares easily. I work late, walk home alone, and mind my own business. Nothing ever really happens in my life, not the kind of stuff you'd fear, anyway. But the night I cut through Harrington Grove Park, everything I thought I understood about danger changed. Back then, I lived on the outskirts of a quiet Midwestern town. The kind where everybody waved, and the biggest drama was whether the high school football team was going to tank another season. Harrington Grove was a long, narrow stretch of trees with a fenced-in playground, a small creek, and a walking trail that connected one half of the neighborhood to the other. I used it constantly. But I never used it after midnight. That night, though, my car broke down while I was on a closing shift at the diner. I didn't have money for a tow, so I walked. The long way home would have taken almost an hour. The shortcut through the park. 15 minutes. So into the trees I went. The air felt different as soon as I entered. Heavy. Soggy. Like it had rained earlier, but it hadn't. The asphalt path was slick, reflecting the dim lamplights like black glass. I kept walking, pulling my jacket tighter around me. About 5 minutes in, I saw him. A tall man stood leaning against the chain-link fence near the basketball court. He wore a rust-red hoodie, hood up, head low. His hands were in his pockets, and he wasn't moving, just standing there. Completely motionless. At first, I thought he was just smoking or scrolling through his phone, but when I got closer, I realized something was wrong. He wasn't leaning. He was facing the fence, head pressed against it like he was listening to something on the other side. I slowed down. The hair on the back of my neck lifted. Something about him felt wrong, like his presence was bending the air around him. "Hey," I called softly, "you okay?" No answer. I stepped back. The last thing I needed was to bother some unstable dude in the middle of the night. I crossed to the opposite side of the path and kept moving. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Behind me. I glanced back. He was no longer at the fence. He was on the path now, walking the same direction I was, about 40 feet behind. Same hoodie. Same slow steps. Same bowed head. I told myself not to panic. People walk at night. It's not a crime. Maybe he lived in the neighborhood. Maybe he was heading home too. But he wasn't matching a normal pace. He was matching mine. Every time I sped up, his footsteps grew quicker. When I slowed, he slowed. I tested it 3 times, each more obvious than the last. He mirrored everything I did. My mouth went dry. I tried to look natural, pulling out my phone and pretending to text while sliding my finger up to dial emergency services if needed. My heart thudded so hard I felt it in my ears. A minute passed. Then another. When I looked again, he was closer. Much closer. 20 feet. Still facing downward. Still shuffling slowly. Something in me snapped. Fight or flight kicked in, and flight won by a landslide. I bolted. The sound of his footsteps instantly changed. They slammed against the pavement, heavy, fast, brutal. He was running too. I didn't dare look back. The trail curved to the right toward the playground. I sprinted toward the small footbridge that crossed the creek. If I could get across, I'd be near the houses. I'd be safe. But as soon as I hit the bridge, a sharp metallic rattle exploded beside me. The rust-red man had grabbed the railing, hard enough to shake it violently. The bridge shuddered under my feet. My mind blanked. I ran faster, lungs burning. When I reached the other side, I finally turned. He wasn't behind me. He was in the middle of the bridge, standing perfectly still again, hood low, facing me. His arms hung at his sides, fingers twitching like he was trying to decide what to do next. I backed away slowly. He didn't move. For a moment, it felt like a standoff. The cold creek water rushed between us. The wind rustled through the trees. The swings creaked behind me. I thought it was over. It wasn't. He began to walk. But this time, something was off. His movements were jerky, uneven, like a puppet whose strings were being yanked by someone who didn't understand anatomy. His head tilted slowly upward. And that's when I finally saw his face. There was no face. Not a blank mask or shadows. It was real skin, smooth skin, stretched where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should have been. No features. No openings. Nothing. Just a pale, fleshy surface, tightened like wax. I didn't scream. I couldn't. All sound died in my throat. He started running. I spun around and tore across the playground wood chips so fast I nearly ate dirt. The slide tower loomed above me, and I ducked behind it, sucking in desperate breaths. My heart hammered so loudly I thought he'd hear it. Then. Crunch. A single step. He was on the playground. I peeked around the tower, and my stomach twisted into a cold knot. He wasn't searching. He was listening. Head tilted. Body motionless. As if sound guided him better than sight ever could. I clamped a hand over my mouth and forced my breathing silent. He walked slowly toward the swings, steps deliberate. The chains rattled as he brushed one of them with his fingers, head tilting again like he was smelling the air. He took one more step. And paused. Exactly where my footprints were. My terror erupted into action. I sprinted from behind the tower toward the picnic area. The moment my foot hit the ground, he shrieked, this horrible, warped, muffled howl like someone screaming through a thick sheet of rubber. It didn't sound human. He charged. I ran so hard my legs felt like they were ripping apart. The exit gate came into view, and I pushed every ounce of strength into reaching it. His footsteps thundered behind me, closer, closer. I burst out of the park and onto the sidewalk, nearly collapsing. Headlights flashed, and a pickup truck screeched to a stop beside me. The driver rolled down the window. Jesus, are you okay? You look like you're being chased. I turned around to point, to scream that something was inside the park. The gate stood open. But nobody was there. The playground was still. Empty. Quiet. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the next. I stopped using the park entirely. I drove out of my way to avoid it. But the story doesn't end there. 2 weeks later, the news reported a body found in the creek under that same bridge. A man in his late 30s. Cause of death, unknown. But the part that made me feel like puking. Witnesses said he had been wandering the park at night, trying to find his missing brother. A brother who always wore a rust-red hoodie. A brother whose face had reportedly been disfigured in an accident years ago. A brother who disappeared without a trace. And the police statement ended with one chilling line. The victim's skin showed signs of repeated stretching and scarring around the face, suggesting someone had been manipulating the tissue. Someone. Or something. Every time I think about that night, I still see him standing on that bridge, tilting his featureless head in my direction, listening for me. And I pray I never hear that muffled scream again.